Say that again?
Yep. Hi everyone! I thought with the release of Fantastic Four First Steps, it might be a good idea to revisit Fantastic Four 2015, or as most people know it, Fan4stick. It's been 10 years since the movie was first released. Can you believe it's been 10 years? So I wanted to watch this movie with a more objective lens. But straight up, I just have to say this movie is very messy. And not just the movie itself, but also the production. And personally, I was really in the loop of things. When this movie was first announced, it was around the time when I discovered things like fan forums. So I was aware of the rumors, like the initial plan of the movie having a darker tone, almost like a body horror film. I also heard about the incel Dr. Doom vlogger rumor too. It was a really wild time because with every single piece of rumors or leaks, everyone is just like, what is happening? I'm not going to cover much about those rumors or those leaks in this video because I wanted to focus more on analyzing the movie and sharing my thoughts about it. So let's do this. The movie opens with Reed Richards doing this show and tell in 5th grade about how he wants to be the first person to teleport. Everyone, including Homer Simpson, ridicules him, but the only person to believe in him is Ben Grimm. Reed shows Ben his invention and they bond. Fast forward some years, Reed and Ben are at this science fair where Reed got recruited by Dr. Franklin Storm to create a more upscale version of his invention because Dr. Storm believes that Reed's work can actually transport people to another dimension. Reed was then brought to this, I don't know, I thought it was initially like a college, but as it turns out, it's a workplace of sorts. As Reed explores the workplace, he talks to Sue Storm, who clocks him for wanting to be famous. Reed insists he wants his work to make a difference, rather than wanting to be famous. With the help of Sue, Johnny, and Victor Von Doom, and other people in the Institute, Reed assembles a bigger version of his initial invention. After a successful trial run, the kids are very excited, until they realize they won't be able to go to this alternate dimension because the people who fund the project wants to bring in people from NASA. This devastates Reed and Victor. Reed because, well, we're going to talk about this later, but Victor because he really hates the government. Because they're disappointed, Reed, Johnny, and Victor get drunk, and at Reed's suggestion, they decide to go to the alternate dimension before NASA can. While he's still drunk, Reed calls Ben to join them, and Ben goes there. And, you know, boys will be boys. And things ensue. Only Reed, Johnny, and Ben manage to return because Victor is... yeah. But the kids got these body horror sequences as they deal with the pain that comes with the exposure to these, lava goo thing. They are brought to this government facility, and when Reed hears Ben crying in pain, Reed escapes his confines because he's flexible, and then Reed finds Ben and vows to help Ben, but then he runs away because the guards are gaining on Reed. Ben feels abandoned and he becomes very angry at Reed. And that is the first half of the movie. I'm going to speed run the second half of the movie. 1 year later, Ben and Johnny and Sue are under supervision of the government. Ben does ops for them because he was hoping the government would cure him. Meanwhile, Johnny wants to go on missions and Sue and Dr. Storm are like, no. So they track down Reed in hopes to fix the machine, I guess, so they can find the cure. So Sue does track down Reed, and then Reed returns, and then Reed manages to fix the machine, and they go back to the alternate dimension and they find Crash Dummy Doom. They bring Doom back and he's super upset and he's like, time to destroy the world. He trashes the government facility and Reed, Ben, Johnny, and Sue have to work together to stop Victor. They stop him and they make a deal with the government to do more research, but they will own the research now. And then they want a space to do this. They go to their new space and then Reed is like, oh, we need a name. And Ben is like, oh, that is fantastic.
Yes, it is.
I don't want to be too negative, so let's start with the stuff that I like. First, Reg E. Cathey really acted his butt off in his role as Dr. Franklin Storm. He was genuinely the only one who locked in, and I sort of feel bad for him. The only good scene from this movie is the one where Dr. Storm talked to Johnny about how Johnny should apply himself more and do things beyond just racing cars. I feel this is one of the very few scenes where you actually get a sense of the characters and the relationship, and this is one of the few scenes that are actually acted well. Second, I somewhat like Reed's arc, or what is even presented of it. He keeps insisting that he wants to make a difference with his work, but it is clear that he has some ego to him. He's the one who suggested they should use the machine before NASA does because he wants the glory. This came about after the boys got drunk and they discussed how people only ever remembered Neil Armstrong as the first man on the moon without crediting the people who actually sent Armstrong to space. Reed wants the acknowledgement and the accolades. His hubris is ultimately what caused his friends, especially Ben, to get hurt. Reed's motivation in the second half of the movie is kind of trying to help Ben and maybe make amends, and I would have loved to see more of that and see him owning up to his mistakes and maybe face more consequences, but not in this movie. And that's it. Those are the things that I semi-liked about the movie. My biggest problem with this movie is I just find this movie incredibly boring, at least with stuff like Madam Web. That was so bad, so good, but Fan Four Stick is just there. The first time I watched this movie, I watched it on the plane and I got so bored and I almost fell asleep. But I had the time to pause the movie. Like, I made the active decision to pause the movie and then go to sleep. And I only finished the movie because I had nothing else to do until the plane landed. When I rewatched this movie for this video, I watched it at 2 times the speed because it was just so slow. And the extra speed actually made things a bit funnier because the dodgy CGI and weird deliveries are more obvious. But this is not good. Like, people should not want to speed up your movie, you know? Something I observe about this movie too is just the way it feels so barren and sparse. The movie has a minimal number of locations, and for a while I thought the majority of the movie takes place in the Baxter building, and this is true for the first half of the movie. The second half actually takes place at the government facility, so that's another place, but both places look the same to me. Like, tell me I'm not crazy. I don't know why they don't make the location look a bit more different, like maybe have the Baxter building look a bit more vibrant and bright, because this is like the nice workplace, to contrast it with the cold and barren government facility. But both places look barren and cold, and without those differences, the movie felt very static and uneventful and lethargic. Nonetheless, the number of locations in a movie should not be a problem. Movies like 12 Angry Men are set in one room, but they still manage to be exciting. That's because the storyline and the characters are so compelling that you still want to watch it. The dialogue reveals so much about the characters and how they relate to the stakes of the movie. And there are subtle ways in which Sidney Lumet, the director of 12 Angry Men, and Boris Kaufman, the cinematographer, moved the camera or used different lenses to create more dynamic in the scenes. Sadly, Fan Four Stick doesn't have much of that. The characters feel very one-note and too similar to each other. I'd say only Dr. Storm or Reed are remotely interesting. Dr. Storm mostly because Cathey elevated the material that he was given with his performance, and for Reed it's because he's the only character that felt like a character with a journey. It doesn't help either that there are obvious reshoots and you can tell which scenes are reshot based on the way Sue's hair color, length, and texture change between scenes and even shots. It just became distracting. But sometimes I wonder if this movie is panned even more because it is a Fantastic Four movie, you know? What if this is an original body horror movie about some young geniuses who got powers from an alternate dimension? Josh Trank directed Chronicle, which I actually really liked, and it was an interesting look into how normal people, in this case high school kids, would react if they get powers. Chronicle is more of a thriller and a horror film than your regular superhero movies, and it works because they committed to the story and the tone, and the characters themselves are well written and performed well. However, the same cannot be said for Fan Four Stick because it just feels like it doesn't know what it wants to be. More than anything, it felt like a movie with the Fantastic Four brand names slapped on it. Nothing in this movie, except for the characters' names and some powers, scream Fantastic Four. Besides, Fantastic Four is inherently inherently campy and goofy. It would never work with the dark and gritty tone that a lot of superhero movies adopted around the 2010s. The characters also do not feel like a team, let alone Marvel's first family. They barely even feel like friends. They just seem like acquaintances, and they remain acquaintances at the end of the film. I don't even think Ben and Sue interacted that much either, which is weird. On the other hand, I wouldn't be surprised if this film was just made because Fox wanted to retain the rights to Fantastic Four. When Fox got the rights to produce movies based on Marvel characters, they have to produce those movies within a certain period, or the rights will revert back to Marvel or Disney. This is what happened with Daredevil. Daredevil's rights returned to Marvel after Fox failed to produce a movie within a period of time. It wouldn't be the first time this happened to Fantastic Four too. The old Roger Corman Fantastic Four movie, the one from 1994, that was only made to retain the rights, not because the producers were necessarily passionate about the characters, which makes this even sadder. There's also an element of how around that period of time, studios were trying really hard to launch their own cinematic universes like Marvel. So I wouldn't be surprised if Fox higher-ups were like, oh, we're close to losing the rights to Fantastic Four, that brand has a fan base, maybe we can cross those characters over with the X-Men characters and we'll have a shared cinematic universe. Yeah. They even did this Dark Universe photo shoot thingy where they got the actors from X-Men and the Fantastic Four movies in one photo. Channing Tatum is also here, like, oh my god! While still on the topic of Fantastic Four as an IP and a brand name, I also think because the Fantastic Four are so popular, it becomes tricky to make something that is a complete departure from the original source material. Many movies are based on books and they bear no similarities at all to those books. For example, a lot of DreamWorks animated movies are generally based off of books. But these books do not have the fan base that the Fantastic Four have. How to Train Your Dragon is one of the best animated movies ever, but it bears no resemblance whatsoever to the original books. The books, while popular, they're not as mainstream as Fantastic Four, which is why I think people are a bit more forgiving with the massive changes. Likewise, The Birds by Alfred Hitchcock was also based off of a novel, but no one really knew it was based off of a novel. But then again, The Birds and How to Train Your Dragon are really good movies, and Fantastic is not. But I want to know what you guys think. If Fantastic is not a Fantastic Four film, will you like it more? Personally, for me, the movie is still bad, just conceptually, and when it's executed, it's still a bad movie. It has no momentum, it still feels soulless. While there are some parts where I'm like, yeah, I guess this could work. Ultimately, I feel this movie is such a nothing burger. And because it is a Fantastic Four movie, I feel especially aghast by it. But let me know your opinions in the comments. Thank you for watching this video. If you like it, please engage with it. Comment, like, share it, and maybe even subscribe to the channel too. But I'll see you next time. Bye! Have a good day!